Warning: these social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here. It is now the 26th day of October. Hopefully you guys are doing well. It is a bright, sunny day here where I am at here in the middle part of the country. It's still drying out a bit after, 4.5+ inches of rain over the last several days. Hopefully we don't get any more deluges like that here for a little while at least. Hopefully you guys are doing well, cruising right through the old fall time, leaves dropping, cool temperatures, all that good stuff leading into the Thanksgiving season here. Today on the broadcast, we're going to talk a little bit about some financials, what's going on in the oil marketplace, some things going on with oil Facebook after their earnings came out yesterday, a little Mcdonald's in the news, still talking about supply chain shortages, Taiwan chips, as well as Amazon in the news and a couple other odds and ends. But first, let me throw this over, and I'll see you back here momentarily. Hey everybody, Spectre here. I want to tell you about my Teespring store that I just opened up with a handful of products in that for you guys, the listeners, the audience, those that are in chat on a day in, day out basis. Always appreciate your support, and I figured what the heck, we'll throw some merch out there for you guys. And so obviously with YouTube and Earth Shenanigans as of late, I'm going to be looking to expand to other platforms, and well, that all comes at a cost, so I figured what the heck. That being said, I got some t-shirts and that out here. You can see those in black, white, and gray. Spectre Does News. Got a water tumbler, 20 ounce there. Got a coffee mug you can get in black or white. And of course, we got the Let's Go Brandon #FJB shirt, which you can also find in black, white, or gray. Right now, you can find that all over at https specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. That's https://specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. Thank you for your support. All right on into it we go. Futures surge to all-time high as earnings supercharge market melt up. The wall of worry that preoccupied traders just weeks ago has melted away and has been replaced with a global market melt-up, just as Goldman predicted again this weekend. Almost seems like they're prophetic, huh? Old Goldman predicting $90 a barrel for oil, and all that's seeming to come into fruition here. And of course this past weekend as well, which pushed U.S. index futures to a new all-time high this morning when SPOOs hit 4580.75 while propelling European and Asian stocks higher as corporate earnings helped boost sentiment amid lingering concerns about inflation and growth. As of 7:15 a.m. Eastern, U.S. equity futures were up 0.42% or 19.25 points. Dow Jones futures were up 126 points or 0.35%, and Nasdaq futures jumped 0.61%, extending cash market gains boosted by Tesla's rally to a $1 trillion market value on a big order and Facebook's results announcement revealing strong user growth and a $50 billion stock buyback. 10-year Treasury yields dropped by 1 basis point while the dollar slid to session lows. Bitcoin traded around, 63 grand. So if you got an extra 63 grand laying around, well, you can pick up at least one Bitcoin. I suspect you probably don't. Here's our graphic of the E-mini S&P futures where that is tracking. Says the barrage of earnings reports continued on Tuesday morning with United Parcel Service, General Electric, and 3M all gaining a pre-market trading after strong results. Eli Lilly advanced after raising full-year forecasts. Backed shares jumped 36% in the U.S. pre-market session after more than tripling Monday when MasterCard said it has inked a deal with the firm to help banks offer cryptocurrency rewards on their debit and credit cards. Facebook also rose after pledging to buy back as much as $50 billion more in stock, with tech heavyweights Twitter, Alphabet, and Microsoft reporting after the market close on Tuesday. Here are all the notable pre-market movers. Facebook, as mentioned, rises as much as 2.5% in pre-market as analysts stay bullish despite a third quarter revenue miss and an outlook that was below consensus. Advertising growth is seen improving in 2022. Tesla gains 1% after stock closed at a record high, boosted by several factors on Monday, including a large car order from rental firm Hertz and Morgan Stanley lifting its price target. Created was up 27%, adding to a 50% gain over the past two trading sessions, amid a rally in a growing number of retail trader favorite stocks linked to former U.S. President Donald Trump. Interesting. Redbox rise as much as 130% after the firm completed a business combination with Seaport Global Acquisition, a special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC for short. Cryptos exposed stocks rise with Equinix previously down as Diginex more than doubling in value after listing Polkadot on its platform and extending Monday's gains. Earnings season is helping to counter concerns that elevated inflation and tightening monetary policy will slow the recovery from the pandemic. Some 81% of S&P 500 members have reported better than expected results so far, though Citigroup Inc. warned that profit growth may be close to peaking. Wait till fourth quarter hits, and that's announced in January of next year. Outside of that market snapshot, S&P 500 futures up 0.4% to 45.76 and change. Stocks Europe 600 up 0.6% to 474.91. Nikkei up 1.8%, 29,106.01. Shanghai Composite down 0.3% to 3597.64. Euro little changed at 1.1609. Brent futures down 0.3% to 85.76 a barrel. Gold spot down 0.3% to $1,802.76 per ounce. And the U.S. dollar index little changed at 93.86. Some other overnight news out of Bloomberg. Traders are wagering on rate hikes of as much as 158 basis points over the next year in countries including the UK, New Zealand, and South Korea amid soaring costs of living and commodity prices. Yet a flattening in yield curves, historically seen as the market's assessment of economic health, indicates rising concern that such a rapid withdrawal of support will hurt the nascent recovery. Financial markets have stubbornly ignored recent warnings from ECB policymakers, including Chief Economist Philip Lane, that they're wrong to anticipate a rate hike at the end of next year. The task of persuading people otherwise will fall to President Christine Lagarde as she presents the Governing Council's latest decision on Thursday. And some more news out of News Squawk back to Asia. MediaTek sees 2021 revenue growing by 52%, third quarter profit beats. UBS going full bull on China despite outflows and growth worry. China's IPO flops raise red flag over shares pricing, according to ECM Watch. Asian shares rise as investors focus on major tech earnings. Back over to Europe, says UBS Group going full bull on China despite outflows. Adler sells real estate portfolio valued at more than euro 1 billion. Europe gas extends gains with weak Russian flows, Norway outages. And also, latest impact of Europe's energy crisis is a plunge in trading. So that being said, what do we got on the docket for the calendar today? Well, a couple coming up at 9 a.m. this morning. August S&P Case-Shiller Composite, 20-year, year-over-year, estimated as 20%. Prior was a 19.95. Month-over-month, SA, estimate 1.5%. Prior was a 1.55%. August FHFA House Price Index, month-over-month, estimate was 1.5. Prior was a 1.4. 10 a.m. this morning, October Conference Board Consumer Confidence estimate of 108.2. The prior was 109.3. Present situation prior was a 143.4. Expectations prior 86.6. Also at 10 a.m., October Richmond Fed Index estimate of 5. Prior was a negative 3. Also at 10 a.m., September new home sales estimate 758,000. The prior print was 740,000. Month-over-month estimate 2.5%. The prior was 1.5%. So aside from that, as mentioned throughout here, we do have some earnings net coming up here today. Pre-bell, we talked at UPS, GE, 3M, Waste Management, Eli Lilly, to name a few. Some of those coming after close today. We got the old chip makers, AMD, we got Microsoft, we got Alphabet/Google, Visa, Twitter, Robinhood, Texas Instruments, to name a few. So it's going to be kind of a jam-packed day. And of course, we've got a number of big heavyweights net coming the rest of the week as well. So aside from that, Facebook swings wildly after revenue miss. Poor guidance, but announces $50 billion buyback. This came out yesterday after they announced their earnings. This is after a fire hose of bad news in recent weeks for the world's largest social network, unleashed by a whistleblower and former employee. Yeah, wink wink, whistleblower, right? Who is doing everything in her power to get the government to regulate and break up the world's largest distributor of news, with a steady leak of damning reports about the company's internal practices, and which culminated with Facebook being ignominiously displaced from its spot as the fifth largest U.S. company by Tesla, as Maggot is now bigger than FAMG. So, the old FAANG used to be Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. Since replaced Netflix, kicked them out. You got Microsoft, so Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Nope, no longer Facebook. They got booted yesterday. So now we got Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, and now Tesla. So yeah, what it feels like to be king of tech apparently, and high stocks. Some are expecting a kitchen sink quarter from a company whose every disclosure is now under the microscope, including not just a big miss to expectations, but also a sharp drop in users in the company as is finally forced to disclose its true user base. And of course, see the recent Wall Street Journal report that internal Facebook research found that new users with multiple accounts are undercounted, very prevalent. That said, Facebook did close the day modestly higher, and after starting deep in the red, it closed up 1.3%. Quick look at market expectations. Facebook is expected to report third quarter earnings per share of $3.19 on revenue of $29.45 billion, which would amount to growth of 37%, a drop from the 56% year-over-year growth in quarter two, which, however, lapped a quarter heavily impacted by COVID lockdowns. Flashing forward here, some of the earnings we talked about: $29.01 billion, up 35% year over year. That was a miss, according to their estimates of $29.45. Advertising revenue $28.28 billion, up 33% year over year, and the estimate was $28.99. Other revenue $734 million versus $249 million year over year. Third quarter earnings per share, $3.22, beating the estimates from the old analysts at $3.17. Third quarter operating margin, 36%, missing estimates of 37%. As far as subscriber metrics, monthly active users, 2.91 billion, up 6.2% year over year, missing the estimate of 2.92 billion. Daily active users, 1.93 billion, up 6% year over year, beating the estimate of 1.92 billion. Monthly active people totaled 3.58 billion, beating the estimate of 3.52. Also, as far as projections, Facebook sees fourth quarter revenue up 31.5 billion to 34 billion, missing estimates of 34.8, and Facebook sees full year capex at 19 billion, which saw 19 to 21 billion, missing estimates of 20.29 billion. Digging in the earnings slideshow, we find that U.S. daily average users did post a modest increase to 196 million from 195 million in quarter two, with total daily average users up 22 million to 1.93 billion. However, then the underside of that, despite the increase in total MAUs, total revenue per user was down sequentially. So they list the family average revenue per person, which, by the way, don't forget, if you are using the service and you pay nothing for it, you are the product that they are making money off of. Keep that in mind. Operating margin continues to decline, and here we see that it's dropped since quarter four of last year. More ominously, there was a drop in US and Europe revenue, and it's highlighting that there as well. So apparently, between us here stateside and EU, apparently we're pretty well done with Facebook and had enough. As a result of a drop in ARPU, average revenue per user, we see that also trending down. Our outlook reflects the significant uncertainty we face in the fourth quarter in light of continued headwinds from Apple's iOS 14 changes and macroeconomic and COVID related factors. Yes, we always got to throw in COVID as, that catch all for all these corporations. The knee jerk reaction in the stock was to slide on the miss in revenues and poor guidance, but it has since rebounded and was trading near session highs as investors welcomed the buyback announcement. So yeah, you got an extra 50 billion laying around. The board approves that, and the top brass at the company will line their pockets just a little bit more. So apparently, Facebook doing their thing, and of course, one thing to highlight here that's of very interesting, which is very interesting to me at least, is that before all these earnings here, we're finding that there seems to be some whistleblower type activities or hit pieces coming out against them. And the next piece I'm going to cover is no different by way of McDonald's, which coincidentally just so happens to be putting their earnings out here in the next day or so. But Facebook has seen that. I'm wondering if we're going to see something by way of Google here or Microsoft. We also see something by way of Amazon, which I have in a stack here this morning as well. It's almost like people are putting these hit pieces out to potentially knock them off their pedestals, as it were, and perhaps interrupt their earnings. I don't know, just a casual observation on my part, I guess. But McDonald's employees set to strike Tuesday over sexual harassment with the goal of unionizing. And think of that right now. Look how many corporations, companies, and whatnot that are unionized are all out on the picket lines or talks of going out and striking at this point. Why do you suppose that is? Is that a coincidence, you think? I don't think so. Says thousands of U.S. workers have gone on strike this month, showing their increasing power can enforce corporate change among employers amid a tightening labor force. The latest news of a strike will upset fast food customers who frequent old Mickey D's. On Tuesday, McDonald's employees from at least 10 major cities will walk off the job over the company's handling of sexual harassment at the workplace and call for better pay. Employees are eventually making strides to unionize. I'm going to strike because, despite years of protest, McDonald's still refuses to take responsibility for the countless women and teenagers who face harassment on the job at its stores across the globe. Jamelia Fairley, a McDonald's employee in Sanford, Florida, told The Hill. And says no more sexual harassment, apparently a Me Too sign there. Fairley added that nothing will change for me or millions of other workers like me until we use our collective voice to make change happen. We're out here really demanding a union so we can get changes that we can't get by ourselves. Rita Blaylock, a McDonald's worker in North Carolina, told local news WRAL. Says right now, workers are getting harassed, and some people are scared to speak out because they feel like they might lose their jobs. Coming together in a union would help because we would have a real voice in our store, not just about abuse, but about wages and safety and everything else, said Blaylock. She said she has been with the company for over a decade and averages around $10 an hour. She is hoping for change on multiple fronts with the pathway towards unionization. October has been a month full of strikes. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of workers have been striking across various industries. One of the most notable and most recent has been the John Deere strike. The right to strike doesn't appear to be waning anytime soon, as labor shortages have given workers the upper hand to protest unfair labor practices committed by their employers and low pay. AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler recently told The Hill that workers are fed up with harsh working conditions and lousy pay. This is the capitalist system that has driven us to the brink, Schuler said. Inequality is just getting worse and worse. We think unions are the solution, she added. Old Mickey D's, which has already been suffering from a lack of workers, may experience complete shutdowns tomorrow in some cities and towns as laborers flex their muscles. So there you have it. In the words of the AFL-CIO, unions are the answer. Or are they? I think Amazon had something along those lines down in Alabama here months ago, and that got struck down. However, National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, I believe, stepped in and says, oh, there was some unfair business going on behind the scenes, and they may try to reunionize down in Alabama, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a right-to-work state, by the way. So I find the timing of all of this interesting, the rise of the unions. And of course, where do the union dollars typically go by way of, say, supporting candidates in office? Yeah. You starting to see what a racket this is? And do you honestly believe that unions are going to benefit the little guy? I sincerely question it. Outside of that, Biden plays chicken with semi-truck drivers. And that's out of the Epoch Times yesterday. Says American truckers don't like taking orders, but the old Biden admin has increased pressure on them to take the jab, willing or unwilling. Does that make a lot of sense? All through the pandemic, truckers endured hardships to keep America's infrastructure running. They waited in line for hours in sight of bathrooms they weren't allowed to use. On the road, some died alone of COVID-19. Now, as supply chains disrupted, Americans need them more than ever. But faced with the prospect of a forced jab, many drivers are considering quitting. I'd fight it, said veteran trucker Mike Widdens, referring to the vaccine mandates. I think a lot of us will be quitting. Who likes to be forced to do stuff you don't want to do? Widdens isn't alone in his willingness to leave trucking if forced to vaccinate. Polls by trucking publications Commercial Carrier Journal and Overdrive indicate that up to 30% of truckers will seriously consider quitting if forced to vaccinate. If they quit, the consequences for America may be massive. U.S. Transport estimates that 70% of American freight goes by truck. It would hurt shipping big time, Whidden said. And obviously, as we've tracked that here for the last several weeks now, it's not just the ports net, LA, Long Beach, and various other locations net around the globe, but think of all of the freight net that gets trucked out of those ports all across the country. And mind you, this is on top of already some 60-some thousand truckers net that they are short, right? So narrowing lanes. The September 9th mandate established an emergency standard which the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is allowed to issue if it determines workers are in grave danger. Currently, the White House Office of Budget and Management's Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs is reviewing the mandate. The review process can take as long as 90 days. Most of the trucking industry will be unaffected by the Biden vaccine mandate, which demands that all companies with over 100 employees require vaccination or weekly COVID-19 tests. Most truck companies have 6 trucks or fewer, according to the American Trucking Associations. Independent drivers make an average of $50,000 or more per year than drivers at large companies. Some experts say the selective reach of the mandate makes it ineffective. Barbara Smithers, VP of the Indiana Motor Truck Association, told the Epoch Times via email that it makes little sense to cherry-pick who to vaccinate based on company size. Truck drivers spend most of their work hours alone in the cab of a truck, literally one of the safest places possible during a pandemic. So why do they need to be regulated in this way? She said. Testing hundreds of thousands of truck drivers moving across the country every day is a virtual impossibility. For mandate-affected companies, Biden's decision may drive away employees at a time when America needs them most. The American Trucking Association estimates that America needs 80,000 more truckers to meet transportation needs. Well, apparently that figure has gone up an extra 20K from last I saw. 80,000, I think, was what they were saying for over in the UK here in recent weeks, but I digress. Recently, supply chain crises have left many Americans in need. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said the shortage will last as long as there's a pandemic. Did we ever have a pandemic? With backups unloading goods at America's ports, shortages already threaten consumers. But if long lines of trucks waiting to ship goods suddenly become shorter, the crisis will become far worse. Whether America runs short on trucks depends on the Biden administration's orders and how truckers respond. So Joe Trucker and Joe Biden. The average trucker is a big, bearded guy with a sturdy American name like Joe. Joe Trucker is friendly, given the chance, and he thinks of his job as his little service to America. He has a relative in the military somewhere, or he served himself. Toward government, he holds a strong suspicion that increases the more pressure he feels from it. Joe Trucker doesn't usually like interviews. If he doesn't feel open to talking, he drops forward answers like he tosses peanut shells from his window. In exchange for long hours away from home, he gets low pay, independence, and the nation's best sunsets. The CCP virus hasn't been kind to Joe Trucker. At a time when many Americans hunkered down at home, he was still on the road. Trucking life during the pandemic was a series of frustrating restrictions, said trucker Victor Morales at a Georgia 19 truck stop. Morales has driven trucks for 25 years. After a long day on the road, Morales would wait for hours to drop off a truck full of deliveries at a warehouse. But warehouse owners didn't allow truckers to leave their cabs for any reason. You're almost forced, like a second-class citizen, he said. They want the goods and services you got, but they don't even want you to get out of your truck. If they arrived hungry, they waited hungry, he said. They weren't even allowed to use the toilet only steps away. You can literally see a bathroom right there behind the glass, but you can't get out, said Morales. In the eyes of drivers, Biden's mandate is the last step in a long line of restrictions that don't consider their needs or wants. It's unconstitutional, said one trucker, who preferred to remain anonymous. We'll just buy our own damn trucks and run our own company. All we've got to do is shut down, and the country doesn't exist no more. For many drivers, the vaccine mandate may prove the final straw. Some drivers don't trust the vaccine because of how new it is. Some distrust it for personal medical reasons. Others distrust it because they don't trust the government. I had cancer years ago, said trucker Jack McGregory. I don't want to put something that I don't know exactly what it will do into my body. If I die, I want to die with a little more time on my hands than that. McGregory said that he would rather quit than vaccinate. But even those who take the vaccine say they oppose the mandate. At the pilot truck stop at I-69 and Wadhams Road in Michigan, all 10 truckers interviewed by the Epoch Times said they took the vaccine but oppose a vaccine mandate. Kevin Hambrick, a longtime driver with Fortune 500 transportation company J.B. Hunt, opposes the mandate. Each guy should make his own choice, Hambrick said. In Arizona, Florida-based truck driver Juan Martinez said he knows life without freedom, having lived under Cuban communism. He also received a COVID-19 shot and opposes the mandate. You have to decide for yourself, he said. People should do whatever they want to do. Many drivers feel pressured by their employers. After a year of difficult pandemic restrictions, it seems to them that COVID-19 rules grow ever more invasive. In Flagstaff, Arizona, a long-distance truck driver in his late 20s asked not to be identified, fearing reprisal by his employer. There's no place in the middle right now, he said, adding if you want to put something in your body, it's your personal choice. Other truckers who did not want to be named said they felt angry at those who mandated the vaccine. We run our country, one said. They don't give a expletive about this country. So this goes on here for a little bit yet, but I think we kind of get the idea. The bottom line, the truckers are what makes it happen, and should something like some sort of mandate occur, well, you can imagine what is going to happen to our supply chains then, considering how bad they are now. If wherever you're at in the country, or even outside the U.S., perhaps you're seeing empty spots on your store shelves, right? Well, that is slated to get worse if indeed this does go through. So, outside from that, and still along the lines of shortages, we've talked at length about the old chip shortages affecting the automotive industry and various other industries. Well, apparently there was an earthquake in Taiwan over the weekend. Taiwan earthquake interrupts Micron semiconductor factories. So, a powerful earthquake struck Taiwan Sunday and reportedly knocked some of Micron Technology Inc.'s facilities offline, according to Bloomberg. On Sunday, an earthquake of magnitude 6.5 struck northeastern Taiwan. The quake was large enough to affect Micron's facilities in the northern Taiwanese city of Taiwan. Micron is still evaluating the impact and determining the appropriate steps to return to full production. The statement by one of the top computer memory and computer data storage companies was vague and didn't detail what exact product lines were impacted. Micron is a top producer of semiconductor chips, and the ongoing shortage in the industry and new developments arising from Taiwan could darken the outlook for chips. Expectations for the chip shortage to normalize could be at least another year. The semiconductor situation is going to take a long time to fix, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo said at the Milken Institute Global Conference last week. This is one I feel confident saying it's not going to be fixed in a month or two, or 6, or 12 months. Also, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Ltd., the world's largest contract chip maker, evacuated some workers on Sunday as the earthquake shook buildings across the island. Taiwan resides near two tectonic plates and is prone to earthquakes. Suppose the production of Micron chips isn't brought up to full capacity in the near term. A supply chain analysis shows companies such as Apple, Dell, Intel, HP, LG, Hewlett-Packard, and Cisco Systems could face order issues. And of course, this graphic highlights just how many places these Micron technology chips go into, and it is extensive. And it says already Apple, Tesla, and Ford, among many others, have complained about chip shortages. Shown below is the number of times semiconductor shortage has been mentioned in Bloomberg News stories, has hit a record high this month. So, supply chain, I'm assuming that's a misspell there. Says add earthquakes to unexpected issues plaguing supply chains that could exacerbate the great semiconductor shortage. Well, that's what happens when everybody puts all their eggs in one basket, right? And we find out that, hey, we have no manufacturing base here left in these United States, albeit some companies do plan on opening chip plants and that, I believe, in Arizona. And of course, the billions of dollars that'll be spent to make that happen still is a ways off. So in the meantime, guess what? No chips for you. So outside of that, Amazon in the news, and of course their earnings coming up, we get this. Says we're losing everything. Amazon's automated HR system commits wage theft on massive scale. Gee, I wonder if that's meant to give old Bezos a black eye. As Amazon waits to see if workers at its Bessemer, Alabama fulfillment center will be given a second shot at a vote to unionize following allegations of improper conduct on Amazon's part, allegations made by the National Labor Relations Board, the New York Times has just published a shocking story seemingly calibrated to galvanize public anger at the $1 trillion market cap behemoth founded by Jeff Bezos. Apparently, due to a host of errors within the company's HR system, errors caused by underinvestment, according to company insiders, some Amazon workers have been routinely underpaid, and some have also been fired by what appears to be a mostly automated system, mistakenly marked them as no-shows. Per the New York Times, Amazon's management remained oblivious to these problems, despite numerous complaints from workers until finally, 1 year ago, warehouse worker Tara Jones sent a desperate email to then CEO Jeff Bezos himself, asking him to rectify the fact that Amazon had been withholding $90 from her paychecks every cycle, repeatedly, despite her complaints. Frankly, I'm surprised that he even read it. Says I'm behind on bills, all because the pay team messed up, she wrote weeks later. I'm crying as I write this email. Unbeknownst to her, the email set off an internal probe at Amazon. Eventually, That investigation determined that the company had been committing wage theft on a massive scale, as well as abusing its lowest paid and most vulnerable workers in a host of other ways. The company still hasn't finished identifying and repaying workers impacted by the mistakes, which Amazon is blaming on an automated software. And where do you think a lot of these systems are going to go? Automation, right? Only going to get worse from here. Across the U.S., Amazon workers were underpaid, fired, and abused as doctors' notes were mysteriously deleted from systems. When they tried to complain to their case managers, they were routed through Byzantine phone systems that were mostly automated. What little staffing there was involved outsourced call center workers in Costa Rica, India, and Las Vegas, who were overwhelmed themselves due to the immense volume of HR complaints. When it came time for some workers to return from medical leave, Amazon's knotted HR system often took weeks or even months to register them and reinstate them on the schedule. In many cases, this resulted in weeks of lost income. Administrators were aware of these flaws and were often met with similar resistance when they tried to take these issues up the chain. But Amazon has always been so focused on serving the customer that the company failed to realize that its treatment of its workers was starting to verge on abuse. One worker who is being paid disability by Amazon after a heart attack said his payments stopped abruptly for months. The financial strain essentially brought him and his wife to their knees, and when they sought help from the company, they were met with chilling silence. Not a word that there had ever been a problem, said James Watts, 54, who worked at Amazon in Chattanooga for 6 years before repeated heart attacks and strokes forced him to go on disability leave. The sudden loss of his benefits caused a cascade of calamities. Because he was without pay for 2 weeks, his car was repoed. To afford food and doctor's bills, Mr. Watts and his wife sold their wedding rings. We're losing everything, he said. These issues have been known to managers across Amazon for some time. In internal correspondence, company administrators warned of inadequate service levels, deficient processes, and systems that are prone to delay and error. The extent of the problem puts in stark relief how Amazon's workers routinely took a back seat to customers during the company's meteoric rise to retail dominance. Amazon built cutting-edge package processing facilities to cater to shoppers' appetite for fast delivery, far outpacing competitors. But the business did not devote enough resources and attention to how it served employees, according to many longtime workers. A lot of times, because we've optimized for the customer experience, we've been focused on that. Bethany Reyes, who was recently put in charge of fixing the leave system, said in an interview. She stressed that the company was working hard to rebalance those priorities. However, the sad reality is that Amazon devotes seemingly endless resources to monitoring workers' behavior down to the minute. But when it comes time to compensate those same workers who have been subjected to what some have described as a kind of psychological torture on the floors of the company's warehouse, Amazon couldn't care less. These revelations are particularly shocking considering how former CEO Bezos publicly proclaimed in his final little letter to shareholders that Amazon would do a better job taking care of its workers. And while Amazon has seemingly appointed an executive, Bethany Reyes, to oversee the overhaul of Amazon's HR system, there's one obvious, glaring problem. The company is already having a hard time finding workers for its warehouses. Where is it going to find workers to fill out its workforce in HR? Yeah, and flashing back here probably a week ago, I think there was an article out that said basically they were looking for 100,000 workers now to fill the warehouses for seasonal related stuff, full and part-time jobs and the like. Add this on top of that, where are these people going to come from? Good question. So, outside of some financials here today, we get some other news out of Gateway Pundit here this morning, or yesterday late, rather. Completely reckless. Louisiana high school under investigation for vaccinating teenage students without parental consent. Probably every parent's nightmare. And of course, what authority do these high schools not have? and doing that without the consent of their parents. A mother was left stunned and outraged this week when she was made aware of her son receiving a COVID-19 vaccine at his high school without her consent. Jennifer Ravane, the mother of a 16-year-old student at East Jefferson High School in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, found out about the nightmare scenario on Wednesday, which was when an Ochsner mobile vaccination clinic was at the school to vaccinate the teenagers. Somehow, she says, her son was able to sign the parental consent form himself without anyone notifying her before he received his jab. Allowing the minor to receive the COVID vaccine without parental consent directly violates the state guidelines, which require a parent or guardian to sign off on the experimental jab before it can be administered to anyone who is under the age of 18. The policy is clearly stated as such on the Louisiana Department of Health's website. G. Shelley Maturin, the attorney representing Ravane, called out both the school as well as the vaccine clinic for their lawless behavior that has created a nightmare situation. Maturin also claims that multiple other underage students were also permitted to receive the experimental jab without parental consent. He wrote in a statement, "The egregious and reckless actions of Ochsner and East Jefferson High School went well beyond any legal and moral bounds, and at a minimum constitute a battery upon the minor child. Their actions should shock the conscience of all citizens of Louisiana." And I guess I would question how many other schools is this taking place in across the country? How many mobile clinics are popping up and stopping in at your local high school? Do you guys have similar measures in your local departments of health? Might be worthy of checking out, and also having a little talk with Junior or Sally and say, look, if any of these folks try to pull this crap in school, do not fall for it. Maturin is saying he's examining every avenue to hold the vaccine clinic and the district accountable for their egregious actions. The healthcare provider who administered the shots at the school, Ochsner Health System, apologized for their employees who ignored the protocols they had in place when vaccinating students at East Jefferson High School. Oh, apology will fix all the graphene and poisons and that just got dumped into your system. That'll make it all better. They also confirmed that the incident took place at one of their mobile vaccine clinics that was part of a school vaccination event on October 21st, 2021. According to 4WWL, a spokesperson from Ochsner said the following: "While we firmly believe in vaccinating adolescents to keep them safe from COVID-19, this should be done only with parental consent. Our team has been notified that a student was vaccinated without proper parental consent at a school vaccination event on October 20th, 2021. We have procedures in place to ensure that all policies are followed. However, in this instance, this did not occur. We have taken immediate action to review our on-site vaccination policies and to ensure that these policies will be strictly enforced moving forward. As a leading healthcare provider in this community, we value the trust that parents put in us to care for their children, and we are revising our school vaccination program to ensure that this does not happen again. We are in communication with the parent who brought this to our attention. We offer our sincere regret and apology for any distress this has caused." Any distress, huh? I wonder if Ochsner would be liable for any damages that come up long term. Ever think of that? You think Congress passed any legislation to protect some of these pop-up clinics as well as Big Pharma? We'll have to see. I believe this will probably at some point get litigated. Jefferson Parish Public Schools also confirmed that the incident took place in a statement that was released by the board on Friday night. The letter made clear that the school board had partnered with multiple healthcare providers to provide vaccinations to students and staff members on school grounds. They also acknowledged that obtaining written consent from a parent before a student receives a jab would be considered standard operating procedure, but the practice was not followed by the vaccine clinic. Frankly, if I'm a lawyer or find a decent lawyer and I'm a parent, I would find and try to charge him as being criminally negligent. Jefferson Parish Public Schools released a state late Friday night statement. Looks like this is a repeat of above, so I'll skip over that. And there's the footage of that as well. So, bottom line, be aware of this going on, and perhaps this is taking place in more than just Louisiana. I would suspect that this is probably taking place all across the country, especially as we find out that they want to absolutely put these jabs in anywhere from 5-year-olds on up. Why? When you have a 99.997% chance of surviving. And by the way, kids are the least susceptible to spreading the COVID, if it even exists. Cold, whatever it is, right? So do you think that they really need the jab? Nonetheless, over to do some vote-related stuff from the election. Breaking: Fulton County, Georgia ordered more than 1 million absentee ballots from printer days before the 2020 election, knowing there was no time to mail them out. Why? Good question. Says more shocking news on Runbeck Printing Company, which supplied ballots to both Arizona and Georgia. We've already made some shocking observations about Runbeck, the Arizona printing company involved in the 2020 election in both Arizona and Georgia. We know that Runbeck shipped thousands of ballots to the same guy in Georgia, who is behind the calls of a water main break in Atlanta, and who was behind the removal of the whistleblower from working in Georgia elections. If there was a Republican Party in Georgia who cared about the integrity of their elections, this guy would be gone. And another article: mysterious Georgia ballots were addressed to elections consultant Dwight Brower, the same guy who reported the fake water main break and then terminated election whistleblower. Convenient, huh? We also know Brian Runbeck works for the company with his name. Although not listed as a member of the executive team, Brian Runbeck identifies himself as the Client Services Manager / Project Manager and Production Coordinator at Runbeck Election Services. He manages the production of election ballots and related official election material. He claims he handled high-pressure deadlines and high-volume production. Mr. Runbeck also made 50 separate donations to Act Blue, Biden for President, and the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee between August 15th and October 30th of 2020. We also know that ballots in Georgia were different for Democrat and Republican areas. This was done by the printer. Now think back to Jovan Pulitzer and what he specializes in, right? Note that the barcode is missing from these ballots. This is important because, as IT specialist Jovan Pulitzer, there we go, noted in testimony earlier this week, the Fulton County ballots in the general election for GOP precincts included a barcode, while the ballots in Dem districts did not include the barcode. Again, if there was a Republican Party in Georgia who cared, this would be investigated and criminals put in jail. Today, Kevin Moncla reports at Uncover DC more on Runbeck Printing. According to Moncla, Fulton County, Georgia, ordered and received over 1 million ballots from Runbeck in the last 10 or so days before the election. The ballots received were absentee ballots based on the size of the ballots ordered and related invoices. It says with just 10 days until the November 3rd election, there was literally no way to sort, prepare, fold, stuff, and mail out the ballots before the election, especially considering there were no envelopes ordered. This fact alone removes any possibility that they intended to mail the ballots. Moncla lists other reasons why this should be investigated. It makes no sense why Fulton County would need over 1 million absentee ballots for the 2020 election only days before Election Day, knowing they would never be mailed out. And again, Gateway Pundit Highlight says, if we had a Republican Party, they would get to the bottom of this. If we had a Justice Department that wanted justice, they would get to the bottom of this. It says if we had a Democratic Party that doesn't steal elections, this would never happen. And of course, no activity on that unless we the people push it. Republican Party doesn't care. DNC, do they want transparency? Oh, hell no, of course not. They're fine and dandy with what's going on. Where's Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, on this? Wonder if she's got any word. Outside of that, CD Media had this. Says New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy to impose statewide COVID vaccine mandates after re-election. Now think of this. As the plandemic was rolling out last year, who were some of the most nefarious of governors in the various states? And, obviously having issues with taking some old seniors and that and taking them out of hospitals, putting them back in homes and things of that nature. Cuomo, Murphy was right up there, Whitmer was up there, Newsom was up there. And this is what he wants to do after re-election. Senior advisor reveals it cannot be done before the election because right now is about him winning. Wendy Martinez, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy campaign senior advisor. Murphy, is going to do it, COVID vaccine mandate, but he couldn't do it before the elections because of the independents and the undecided. Martinez, the independents and undecided are all into the shit. My rights, my shit, and they don't care if they kill everybody. Martinez, Governor Murphy will implement COVID-19 vaccine mandate, but right now is about him winning. It will be fine. Matthew Urquio, manager of New Jersey Forward, the problem is right now because it's election season. The Governor Murphy is not going to have people in the campaign say, like, we're going to have a COVID vaccine mandate now because, for some people that's going to piss them off. I think once we have a win, he's like, all right, guns blazing. Like, who cares? I'm in it. Let's do the mandates. Let's do this, X, Y, and Z. And is that not kind of the similar playbook that we just saw play out with the recall election with Newsom? What took place on day one after the recall in California? Same playbook, right? So here's a video, Project Veritas on this.
Lo va a hacer, pero no podía hacerlo antes de la elección.
The independent deciders would not vote for him if he did the banding.
Because they're into all that shit. My rights, my shit.
Once we have a win, it's like, all right, guns blazing, like who cares? I'm in it, let's do the mandates, let's do this, the X, Y.
Project Veritas has obtained hidden camera recordings inside Governor Phil Murphy's campaign, including from a senior advisor who admits to hiding information from voters until after the election in order to appeal to undecided and moderate voters.
Pero, ¿cómo así los mandates?
La vaccine mandates. Como California, que está el mandato que todo el mundo tiene que tener la vacuna.
Lo va a hacer, pero no podía hacerlo antes de la elección.
Exacto.
Porque
si no se tira todo
lo
el mundo.
independent y los undecided.
The independent deciders would not vote for him if he did the banding.
Because they're into all that shit. My rights, my shit. And they don't care that they kill everybody.
Well, that's good to know then. That after he wins, then he'll do the mandates, the vaccine mandates.
He will. But right now it's about him winning. It'll be fine.
This appears to be a top-down understanding. Matthew Urquio, a manager for New Jersey Forward, which is a campaign project funded by the Democratic State Committee of New Jersey, he echoes the same sentiment.
Do you think he'll do something about that, like the vaccine mandates and stuff?
I think so. I think the problem is right now, because it's election season, he's not going to have people say, like, we're going to have a mandate now. Because, that's, for some people, it's going to piss them off. I think once, we have a win, it's like, all right, guns blazing, like who cares? I'm in it, let's do the mandates, let's do this, the X, Y.
So you think if he talks about mandates for vaccines now, he won't get elected because it's a lot of pushback?
But I think there's some people that, might push back.
If politicians stood as firmly behind their stances as we're led to believe, then why do they feel the need to hide this information from voters? We look forward to hearing from the Phil Murphy campaign, and we look forward to releasing the next installment inside of Phil Murphy's campaign very soon.
So there you have it out of old Project Veritas on the beat as usual. And it says Project Veritas Action Fund released a new video today exposing two Phil Murphy supporters directly tied to his re-election
Thank
campaign.
you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to start with a question for each
And
of
I
the
guess I
five
need to
witnesses.
pause that there. Kick that out of the way. There we have the highlight of what was just spoken. Manager of the New Jersey Forward, Matthew Urquio, whose organization works in tandem with the New Jersey Dem State Committee and has the objective of re-electing Murphy, echoed the same sentiment as Martinez. Project Veritas Action Fund will be releasing a part 2 of the series exposing Governor Murphy's re-election campaign later this week. If any New Jersey resident has information regarding state elections that the public should know about, please visit Project Veritas. So there you have it, folks. Some of the shenanigans going on with some of these re-election campaigns. Obviously, we've got McAuliffe going on over in Virginia, and of course, we've got statements by old 44 himself saying they're going to effectively cheat, steal, whatever way they can to try and put him in. And then, of course, we get this expose behind the scenes, and I would guess we'll probably see similar things play out with various others now who are up for re-election here soon as well. So, again, get the information out there, spread it far and wide, get it out to those who need to know in those respective states, and yeah, stay on it. So that's going to do it for the broadcast here this morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Take care. God bless everybody.